Who killed James Parker? True crime investigation. Before we go any further, do me a favor, lock your doors, turn the lights down, and stay with this story until the end. Like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you think happened, because once you step into this case, there's no turning back. On a quiet stretch of land outside rural Tennessee, the body of James Parker lay face down in the dirt, just yards from the home he built with his own hands. The morning air was cold, the kind that stings your lungs. Dew clung to the grass. And yet, something felt wrong immediately. This wasn't an accident. And it wasn't natural. James Parker was 47 years old when he died in the spring of 2003. A lifelong resident of the area, he was known as a hard-working man who kept to himself. He fixed his own truck, worked odd construction jobs, and rarely left town. His nearest neighbor was almost a mile away. Out here, people noticed when something was off. The first deputy on scene noticed it too. James had injuries that didn't match a simple fall. There were marks on his arms. His boots were missing. And his truck, his pride and joy, was still parked neatly beside the house, keys nowhere in sight. By the time the sheriff arrived, word was already spreading. Something bad had happened to James Parker. To understand why his death shook this small community, you need to understand James. He wasn't rich. He wasn't flashy. But he owned his land outright, and that mattered. Friends said he was stubborn, careful, and not easily fooled. He didn't trust many people, but when he did, he trusted them completely. In the weeks before his death, James had been acting differently. At the local hardware store, he told the owner someone had been asking questions about his property. He didn't say who. He didn't say why. He laughed it off, but the laugh didn't reach his eyes. On the night James died, the timeline gets blurry. He was last seen alive just before sunset. A neighbor passing on the road saw lights on in James's house later that night, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the sound. A low engine noise. Then silence. When investigators searched the home, nothing looked stolen. His wallet was gone, but cash was still hidden in a drawer. His phone was missing. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No overturned furniture. That raised a terrifying question. What if James knew the person who came to his door? Detectives interviewed family members, co-workers, and anyone who had spoken to James in the past month. One name kept coming up, Mark Dalton, a former business partner who had a falling out with James years earlier over land boundaries and money. Mark claimed he hadn't spoken to James in months. His alibi? He was home alone that night. Then there was Sarah Collins, a woman James had been seeing quietly. She admitted they argued days before his death. She said James was afraid of something but wouldn't say what. When police asked her where she was that night, she hesitated. Just long enough to be noticed. For days, the investigation moved slowly. No murder weapon. No clear motive. No eyewitnesses. Until a crime scene technician made a discovery that stopped everything. Behind James's house, partially buried near the tree line, they found something wrapped in cloth. Something heavy. Something metal. And when they pulled it free and unwrapped it, every investigator on scene realized the case had just changed forever. The object wrapped in cloth was a hammer. Heavy. Rusted. Stained dark along the handle. For a moment, no one spoke. The hammer was the kind James would have owned, common, ordinary, but something about it felt deliberate. It had been hidden, not dropped. Placed, not forgotten. And if this hammer was used as a weapon, then James Parker didn't die by accident. Someone wanted him silent. The area behind the house was sealed off again. Forensic teams worked through the night under harsh lights, combing the dirt inch by inch. They found partial footprints leading toward the tree line, then disappearing near a shallow creek. The prints were too damaged to match. The hammer, despite its condition, offered no usable fingerprints. Still, the case shifted from suspicious death to possible homicide. Detective Laura Bennett took over lead on the investigation. She had worked homicides in cities twice this size, but rural cases were different. Fewer witnesses. Fewer cameras. More secrets. She started with James's finances. What she found surprised everyone. James had recently received a large payment, nearly $50,000, from a land deal that was never completed. The buyer backed out, but the money was never returned. There was no paperwork explaining why James still had it. That immediately put pressure on people around him. Mark Dalton was brought in again. When confronted about the land dispute and the missing money, his calm cracked. He admitted he had argued with James recently. Loudly. Witnesses at a nearby diner remembered it. But Mark insisted he left angry, not violent. He repeated his alibi. Alone. No one to confirm it. Then there was Sarah Collins. When detectives searched her phone records, they found multiple calls to James the night he died. None were answered. She claimed she was worried and drove by his house later but didn't stop. That raised another question: why not knock? Neighbors were asked again. This time, one man remembered something new. Around 9:30 p.m., he saw headlights near James's property. A truck, not James's. It idled, then shut off. 10 minutes later, it started again and drove away fast. Detective Bennett felt the case tightening, but every lead slipped away at the last second. Days turned into weeks. Pressure from the family grew. The community wanted answers. Then something strange happened. James's phone, missing since the night he died, suddenly pinged a cell tower nearly 40 miles away. The signal was brief, then gone. When police arrived at the location, they found nothing but an abandoned roadside pull-off. No phone. No people. Just tire marks leading back onto the highway. Someone was moving evidence. That realization changed everything. Police began to believe the killer was watching the investigation. Maybe even steering it. Detective Bennett reviewed old interviews again, line by line. One detail stood out. Sarah Collins mentioned James had been thinking about going to the police about something. She never said what. At the time, no one pressed her. Now they did. Under pressure, Sarah admitted James had discovered discrepancies in a past land survey, paperwork that could cost someone a lot of money if exposed. She refused to name names, saying James told her to stay out of it for her own safety. That statement hit hard. Someone had a motive. A serious one. Police searched James's home again, this time focusing on paperwork. Hidden behind a loose panel in his workshop, they found a folder. Inside were copies of land maps, handwritten notes, and one name circled in red ink. The name wasn't Mark Dalton's. It belonged to someone no one expected. And if James had been right about what he uncovered, then his death wasn't just personal, it was calculated. But before detectives could act on the new lead, something happened that sent shockwaves through the investigation. Early one morning, Detective Bennett received a call. The evidence locker had been breached. And the hammer, the one thing tying everything together, was gone. The missing hammer confirmed what Detective Laura Bennett had feared all along. Someone was close. Too close. Close enough to access the evidence room, close enough to know which item mattered most. This was no longer just an unsolved killing, it was an active threat to the truth. Internal Affairs was quietly notified. Only a handful of people had access to the evidence locker. Names were reviewed. Alibis checked. Tension spread through the department like a slow poison. Every conversation felt guarded. Every glance carried suspicion. Meanwhile, James Parker's family was falling apart under the weight of waiting. His sister, Emily Parker, stood by the gravesite long after the funeral crowds left. She told detectives something she had kept to herself for months. A week before James died, he called her late at night. His voice was low. Careful. He said, if anything happens to me, don't trust what they say at first. When she asked who they were, James changed the subject. That phone call had never been logged. Detective Bennett reopened the hidden folder found in James's workshop. The circled name belonged to Thomas Klein, a county land assessor. A respected man. Married. Well-connected. Untouchable, according to most people in town. On paper, Klein had approved several land surveys over the past decade. But James's notes suggested something darker: altered boundaries, missing acreage, quiet payoffs. If exposed, it would have destroyed careers and triggered criminal charges. Detectives brought Klein in for questioning. He was calm. Polite. Cooperative. Too cooperative. He admitted knowing James, said disputes over land were normal. When asked about the night of James's death, he smiled slightly and said, "I was at home with my wife." Same as always. His wife confirmed it. No cracks. No contradictions. But then forensic accounting found something strange. 2 weeks after James died, a large sum of money moved through a shell account tied to land development. The paper trail was complex, but one thing was clear: it benefited Thomas Klein directly. Before police could act, another blow landed. The missing hammer reappeared. It was found dumped in the Platte River, miles away, after an anonymous tip. Waterlogged. Cleaned. Any remaining forensic value was gone. The message was clear: stop digging. Detective Bennett didn't. She pushed for warrants. Surveillance. Subpoenas. But the case stalled. Witnesses stopped returning calls. One informant recanted completely, claiming he'd misremembered. Another moved out of state without warning. Then, one night, Bennett received a call from a restricted number. A man's voice spoke softly. James didn't make it because he wouldn't stay quiet. That's all you need to know. The call ended. The number was untraceable. Within months, the case was officially labeled cold. Thomas Klein retired early. Moved away. No charges were filed. Mark Dalton faded from the investigation. Sarah Collins left Tennessee altogether. James Parker's death remained officially unresolved. But the story didn't end there. Years later, a new land survey uncovered discrepancies matching James's original notes, quiet proof that he had been right all along. By then, the statute of limitations had expired for several related crimes. The truth surfaced too late to matter in court. Today, people in that part of Tennessee still talk about James Parker. About the man who found something he wasn't supposed to. About the night the lights went out and never came back on. And the question that still hangs in the air, unanswered and unsettling, is this: if the evidence disappeared, the money moved, and the killer walked free, was justice ever really served? Or is the person responsible still out there, living a normal life, knowing they got away with murder?